Tonight I sit down with Dan Ginnivan, founder and owner of Lightlier Films, and talk about his production company and the projects he has worked on. The reels are rolling here on Upstart Film. Good evening and welcome to Upstart Film, where we talk to independent filmmakers about their hardships and successes when creating movie magic. From the KMOS studios in Warrensburg, Missouri, I'm your host, Josh Leonard. Thanks for tuning in. Tonight I have the founder and owner of Lightlier Films, Dan Ginnivan, in studio. Hey Dan, how's it going?
Very good. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Thank you for coming. All right, so let's start off things. Tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get into filmmaking?
I've always been interested in filmmaking. I started in the 80s with my father's 8mm film camera. I went to college and actually got my first degree in history, but by the end of my college career, I'd already started my first video production company, and then came back to Kansas to get a master's in film at University of Kansas.
Okay, awesome. So you have a production company called Lightlier Films. What is Lightlier Films? Tell me a little bit about it.
Lightlier is just the name for my film company that I've had in existence since the end of my career in college. And right now, all we really do is feature films. We have a little bit of client work, but for the most part, we're just trying to do narrative and documentary feature films.
Okay. How'd you come up with the name?
I was actually sitting in John Tibbet's film class, a history survey class at KU in the 90s, and he was talking about the Lumiere brothers and how interesting it was that these French filmmakers, their name means light. And somehow during that lecture, Lightlier wound up written in my notes, and it's been the name of my film company ever since.
Awesome. All right, so you said that you work on short films, feature films, and documentaries. One of them that we had discussed that you've worked on is called The Warrior. Would you mind telling me a little bit about that?
The Warrior is a documentary about Dr. Gary Doolittle, an oncologist at the University of Kansas Medical Center. And he hired me when I started working there as the creative filmmaker for 12 years in the Center for Telemedicine. And so I got a chance to start filming him and following him and learning about his life story. And so then when he got cancer later in the time that we knew each other, it created an opportunity to make a film about the man who treats cancer dealing with his own cancer.
Wow. All right. So we actually have a clip from the documentary, so let's go ahead and take a look, a little clip from The Warrior.
I would say that my story with Dr. Doolittle really starts in the first year of med school. He came and gave our class a lecture on how to deliver bad news. And I left that lecture thinking that if I ever had cancer, I would want him to be my doctor. And 6 months later, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And in the turmoil of that time, there was one thing I knew, and that was that Dr. Doolittle was going to be his doctor. And either I was persistent enough or my dad just believed me, but he decided that Doolittle would be his doctor. And I guess you could say it was the first referral I ever made. I know that about a year, not quite a year after my dad was diagnosed, I was in the middle of second year of med school and just feeling so overwhelmed that with boards coming up and not knowing what my dad's disease was going to do in the next few months, and I really was just struggling. And so I had emailed him with some questions, and he was wise enough to know that he should speak with me in person to answer those questions.
All right, so that was a clip from The Warrior. Let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit longer. So, how did you come up with with the idea? How did you find this idea?
We had become very good friends over the time that we were working together, and when I found out that he had cancer, immediately I thought, how am I going to get him to let me film him about this? And 2 days after he left the hospital from the procedures that he had around his initial diagnosis, he called me up on the phone. He had a month off, and he asked me to come and start filming him, talking about his life in case he died. So his children would have it. Then he got married, and he sent me all of his childhood photos to make a photo montage for his wedding. And so then I wound up with all of his childhood photos of he and all of his family members. And so with all of this material, it really gave us an opportunity to make a comprehensive film about this man's battle against cancer over an entire lifetime.
So, who did you decide to interview for this?
It's entirely him. We don't talk to anyone else throughout the film. There's a narrator, and then it's his voice, and it's another part that's really good about this. He is a wonderful storyteller. It's very compelling.
Okay. And how long is it?
It's going to be probably between an hour and a half and an hour and 15 minutes, somewhere in that range.
All right. And what do you plan on doing with this when it's all said and done?
Well, the first thing we'll do is take a pass through the local cancer institutes at KU and St. Luke's, which are all actually combined now, and see if they want to do anything with it. And then it'll, of course, go to every documentary festival that I can think of. Most of my films I just self-distribute to iTunes, Amazon, and Netflix, and so we'll look at that with this one as well, too.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I'm actually excited to see it, so you should pop it my way whenever
Absolutely.
you're done with it. All right, so let's go ahead and change the topics a little bit. Let's get a little lighthearted. You made a musical, which independent musicals, I don't know. I haven't seen many of those personally, so I think that's really cool. It's called Hard Enough.
Hard Enough.
Go ahead. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Hard Enough is about a girl who starts her senior year in high school at a brand new high school. No one knows her. She just shows up the first day, and she immediately begins to interject herself into situations of bullying that she sees. It's a musical in the way that Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is a musical, or My Best Friend's Wedding, that Julia Roberts. All of the music happens within the film in a mostly realistic way. There's a few fantasy sequences that happen in the girl's mind because she's a very creative person where she sees a few of the musical bits. But for the most part, there's a talent show, there's people practicing and rehearsing songs, and that's where the music comes in throughout it. But it does have a complete soundtrack with 10 songs on it.
All right, cool. How'd you go about coming up with this idea? The musical is not usually what somebody's go-to is at the get-go.
And it wasn't for myself either. My oldest daughter complained to me that all I was doing was writing parts for my son. And so I came up with this idea for this film kind of as a vehicle for her, and then after 3 days of writing it, I knew it wasn't for her anymore. And it needed to have an actress who really was going to be able to carry it off. And so we did a full audition and found a group of really good young people. And that's where it came from, and that's how we wound up with it.
How'd you get about going to film in the school?
Get a school?
Yeah.
Okay, so Lecompton, Kansas has an old high school that is closed now. They merged with Perry, and so they have this classic old high school from the 1920s. It still has the lockers, it still has the classrooms. So we rented that for 2 months from them and had it for our location.
That's awesome. So it took 2 months to shoot everything?
Well, I actually executive produced someone else's mini-series that took place in the school first, and so I got to watch all the problems that they had with the building for a month before we came in and had our month of principal photography.
Okay, and then what about casting? You said you mentioned your children. Do you usually put them in your films?
My middle son is actually quite a good actor, and I try to put him in as many things as I can. He's been in all of our television commercials for Light Liar Films. My oldest daughter is kind of an actress, but she's more of a model, and so I usually don't try to stretch her as much with a role, although her agency thinks that she should act more, so we'll see.
When it comes to the music of the movie, how did you come up with that? I know, I'm not a musician, so if I wanted to make a musical, I'd be able to write the idea, but I wouldn't be able to write lyrics necessarily.
I did write the lyrics for about half the songs. I have the soundtrack has musical collaborators from all over the country. Actually, there's a rap group from Minneapolis that has 2 songs in it. There is a lovely couple in Denver, Colorado, who contributed the opening song to it. And then my usual composer, who I've collaborated with for over 10 years now, he and I would send him the lyrics and he would write the music, and that's how we came up with the entire thing. And we also did buy one song by Not a Surf. We bought it from the publisher.
Oh wow. I've worked with one kid before in a film I've done, but I've never worked with teenagers. How is that? Is there complications when it comes to working with teens compared to adult actors?
There really wasn't. If I have any gifts when I'm working on these things, it's that kids think that I treat them like a grown-up. And so as long as we kept doing that, and we kept, they were short days. We weren't doing 16-hour days. We were doing 8 to 10-hour days, and that was it. And everyone was treated with respect, and there was always food every day. So it was the same as working with adults for the most part.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you get food. That's all you need. So we actually have a trailer for Hard Enough. Take a look.
Mother told me when I was a girl, hear the music from all the world, and still and quiet you will hear the song. And if you learn your part, you can sing along. Sing your song.
Alan, are we ready?
Of course, we're good to go.
And you're sure you aren't going to get into too much trouble?
No, if you guys do what you're supposed to do.
You're the deal, Alan.
Yeah, I am. Now get ready.
At the end, sing your song for the whole wide world. Stand up strong. Be that girl. Keep on singing. You can't go wrong. The world needs to hear. Sing your song.
All right, so that actually was a clip, not a trailer for the film. You could actually check out the trailer on the Facebook page. There's a link to it on his Facebook page, Lightlier Films. Look it up on Facebook. You could be able to find it. So I found out while the clip was playing, you told me something interesting about your lead actress of the film. Would you want to go ahead and tell?
Yeah, Erin Fisher is the young woman in the green in that, and she is the main character. When we were auditioning her and having a discussion about the film before we started production, she just started crying during the conversation about it, because in the film, the character, her father has died. And it turns out that in real life, Erin's father had just died about 20 months before, and so it was very close to home for her.
Yeah, I imagine that would be. So did you have a musical coach to make sure everyone when it comes to training, when it comes to them singing, was there a coach on set, or did you have any of that stuff?
Everybody's lip syncing.
Okay.
It's entirely, we had the songs mastered before production.
Okay.
And so that everyone could just have the songs on CDs in their cars driving back and forth and practice lip syncing, and then it was all lip syncing there on set. Those aren't even the voices of the actresses.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, I've done a music video before, and we had it playing on an iPod, just loud enough for them to hear it, so that way they can lip sync and kind of sing a little bit out loud with it. So I wasn't sure what your process was with that. So we're going all over the spectrum. We went from a real serious documentary to a lighthearted teen musical, and I understand that you also made a horror film, which is actually my favorite genre personally, and it's called Sinners. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that. What is Sinners about?
Sinners is the short name that we call it by. It's actually Sinners of St. Boniface. I'm wearing the wardrobe today that all of the characters wore in that film, or a variation of it. Sinners is just your complete right up the pipe, run-of-the-mill slasher in the woods with a bunch of nubile co-eds movie. It really is. We didn't try to vary from the formula at all, except for every single rule of the horror film we broke. So we stayed right in the formula, but we break every single rule.
Give me an example. What do you?
Well, our main male character is a black guy, and he lives.
Okay. All right. Right.
And then also the main idea behind it was, why would a demon that's killing people, why would a demon punish the wicked and spare the innocent, which is most often the rules in that kind of horror film. So we have the innocents get killed instead of the kids who are wicked, so to speak.
Kind of turning everything on its head, the genre on its head. So how long did it take to make this film?
Well, actually, I wrote this film 10, 11 years ago for Project Greenlight 2, if anybody even remembers that. And it sat around for several years with me not touching it, and then I rewrote the ending. I had a flash of inspiration about the ending that made it much better. And we were able to find the location, and we had a 28-day shoot scheduled, and because of the crazy amount of rain in June of 2014, that ballooned up to about a 40-day shoot, because we had several days that we couldn't get out, because it was almost entirely shot out of doors.
So would you say that doing this for Project Greenlight, would you say that was the inspiration to the film? Or was there another motive behind it besides just that?
The inspiration for the film was just to play those games with the rules of the horror film, and Project Greenlight gave me forced me to sit down and bang out the script.
Okay. Well, we actually have a clip from Sinners of St. Boniface. Let's go ahead and check that out.
You think the blood on the ground was Joe?
It doesn't make sense to me any other way. It was nowhere near the deer blind, but Joe's Bible page was up there. If what we found was where Joe was killed, then the Bible page ties the two places together.
Never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad you two boys are here. Thought you'd have the most level head in a crisis, Billy.
That's the first time you ever called me Billy, not just Mr. Robbins.
What do you think we should do now?
We need to get that van's tire fixed.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Or find another ride out of here. But I'm going to go up to the main road, try to flag down a ride or find a phone. I want all of you to stay in the main cabin, keep the door locked till I get back, right?
Where's Reggie?
Reggie! Reggie! Reggie!
All right, so you see that clip kind of prefaces something that's about to happen. It might be a little scary. Speaking of that, I know when it comes to making horror films, a lot of times you hear, like when it came to like The Exorcist, there's always some, or like Poltergeist, there's always something weird on set that happened and people couldn't, like, unexplaining and kind of supernatural. Was there any of that type of stuff that happened with you guys when you filmed?
It's crazy because we were filming out east of Lawrence in a very remote location. Several of our crew could not get cell phone service while we were on location. And when we would film past sunset, it was a quarter of a mile walk back through the woods to where we parked. And honestly, absolutely nothing weird ever happened. We didn't even have any wildlife encounters during all of it. It went off well. The worst accident that happened to anyone on set happened to me, and safety is a really big deal to me, and so I'm glad it was me. So no, we didn't have any unfortunate or otherworldly events.
What inspires you to do these projects, or what inspires you to be a filmmaker? If you wanted to give a piece of advice to somebody who wanted to make movies, what would it be? What would you tell them?
I've always, I mean, every book I ever read as a kid, I saw it as a movie, and so I kind of knew that this was a way that my mind worked, and I would even start casting them and things like that. When I first started working for KU Med, and I did some films that played for audience of about 1,000 people numerous times, and when I was first doing that, you know, I wouldn't sleep for the 2 nights beforehand, and I'd be so nervous, and I'd go there and they'd be serving a meal, and I couldn't even eat it. But I learned from years and years of doing that I stopped watching the screen when my films were up there, and I started watching the audience and listening to the audience. And that is probably one of the things that's helped me understand what is successful to a crowd more than anything else. Sitting in a room with 500 to 1,000 people and seeing how they react to what you've done, what works and what doesn't. And you know, the thing about that is there's always a surprise. There's always something that you didn't expect to connect with the audience, and it does. And I like those moments too.
Absolutely, those are the best moments. I haven't done a feature, but I did one that was about a longer short that was about 45 minutes, and there's parts where it was a little grindhouse movie, and people would laugh at parts that, I mean, I wanted everyone to laugh the entire time, but there's parts that I didn't expect and all that kind of stuff. So you told me what you planned on doing with Warrior. What do you plan on doing with your other projects, with Hard Enough and with Sinners of St. Boniface?
We plan on having a dual premiere of those two this fall in Lawrence, and do a little bit of a festival reach out, maybe a little for Hard Enough, but much bigger for Sinners. It's a pretty good film. We're doing ADR right now where the actors come in and re-record their audio, and when they see scenes in the rough cut that they weren't there for, they're laughing through the entire film, because it is very much a comedy and a satire as well as a horror film. And so it's the more I see my own actors laughing at the film, the more I can't wait to see it with an audience.
Which is always good, because, you know, if you don't enjoy yourself and you don't think it's funny, then chances are other people won't. Maybe they will. I know, like, writing comedy, I think, is one of the most difficult things, because, you know, you might think it's funny and it's not, especially fusing that with another genre. And horror, you know, like Shaun of the Dead did it so well, and it's kind of hard to top that, you know. So where can people, you said, where can people watch these? You sell them on iTunes? And
well, they will. Right now, the only feature film that I have out there is on Amazon, and it's the World War II documentary that I did for KU. And I'm not even promoting myself, because KU gets the proceeds for those. But yeah, Amazon, iTunes, and Netflix is where they will go after their initial run with festivals, and we'll see about distribution for Sinners.
Okay, and so about distribution, that's a lot. That's all that, the legal things to go through and everything like that. I know very little about that. So for those who want to make movies and they maybe want to just try and get self-distribution or sell it themselves, how do you go about doing so?
Well, most of the websites, you know, Netflix, if you just dig deep enough into its website, there's a spot where you can find the link on how to submit films to them. They used to only take it if you had a distributor. They didn't want to work with independent people now, but now they're a little bit more open to that. iTunes and Amazon is the easiest, really. They'll just take your digital file and start selling it, and they take about 2/3 and you get about 1/3. And iTunes is a little better than that, but it also takes a little more work to get it in there. But all of them, I mean, you can just Google how to get my film on iTunes or how to get my song on iTunes, and there's several different places that can help you right through the process.
How do you get people to, how do you get some traffic towards your films, though? Do you tag it a certain way?
You go out there, you IMDb, and you keep your social media going on things like that. Sinners is going to have a marketing push behind it, kind of a social media viral marketing push with it that we've worked out for 2 years, and we're just waiting for the film to get out there so that we can create awareness around it, and hopefully that will get it rolling pretty well.
So where would you like to see Lightlighter Films go from here?
Well, we're going to keep making films and keep supporting other filmmakers, because we have a lot of equipment that we have on hand that we let other filmmakers use. But we're also going to expand into more digital animation. And our next film, hopefully, is going to be Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, based on the Mark Twain novel. and we want to shoot that here in Kansas and Missouri, and so we need to look like 5th century AD England. So we'll just put in digital castles, and we'll use digital horses and things like that, but we have to be able to render them at photoreal. So that's kind of the thing that we're working towards right now, besides getting all of these other films out of post.
So as far as getting a budget for independent filmmakers, it's usually pretty difficult. So what do you do when it comes to budgeting things? Do you crowdfund or anything like that? Or?
I do not. I have the ability to do about one film a year at the level that I do it, and because I have very limited rental needs, I have enough lights and enough cameras and enough computers to be able to do everything. I'm usually able to do that once and pay a SAG ultra low budget rate to my actors and feed everyone every day. And so just being that cheap and that sparse is the only way to be able to put together a film, and the fact that I've spent 25 years collecting equipment and gear makes it, I don't have those expenditures each time.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you again to Dan Ginnivan for joining me and having a great discussion about Lightlayer Films and his projects. Be sure to tune in next time as we talk more about the movie making process. Again, I'm Josh Leonard, and that's a wrap on this episode of Upstart Film. Good night.